So I hope you enjoyed the film. I hope you watched the whole thing because there's a lot to it. I will tell you that for me, so let me start with this. I've had people ask me. Both of my kids, for example, went through. They almost died when they were young, and so that was, of course, traumatic. And many of us go through all kinds of traumatic things. And I've had people ask me before a pretty common question, which is something like, "How do you get by?" Right? Like when things are really hard, kind of what carries you through.
Yeah.
And I've come to an answer that often is that what really gets me through is the supernatural. And that might be a weird answer, but for me, what happens anytime I experience the supernatural, from the like barely supernatural to the really crazy supernatural, what it really tells me immediately is like, wow, there's so much more going on than I can see. Like I see this tiny sliver of what's going on. There's so much else happening. And for some people that might be really disconcerting.
Yeah.
But for me, it actually is really comforting because it helps me look at nasty circumstances or bad situations and feel like, okay, like God, there's plenty of room here for God to be in control and still good, and I don't have to understand all of it.
Yeah.
And as weird as that is, that's been very comforting to me over the years.
Well, I think a lot of times in the circumstances, like you said, when your kids were born and there was trauma, or just big questions, I think we're left thinking it's up to us, maybe.
Yeah.
And so there's this element that there is so much more beyond what we see in front of us. I think it's encouraging if we do have a framework of God, but if not, maybe it freaks people out.
Yeah.
This was really good. There's a follow-up film to this that just came out, Finger of God 2. Did you know that?
I didn't know there was a sequel. I knew that they had Father of Lights, and there was another one whose name I can't remember. So I know he's been continuing to make films like this.
I think he goes back to a lot of the folks that he interviewed the first time, but it looked really good.
Yeah.
So we'll put a link to the part 2 or second movie in there also.
There's something else about the supernatural that I think is worth saying, which is if we read the Bible and we are asked to believe it, right, take it at face value, the Bible includes a lot of supernatural.
It does.
And yet if our lives show none of it, or our experiences has no supernatural in it, we can't help but wonder what happened.
Yeah.
Right? Like, where did all this go? And is this a fairy tale,
right,
or is this real? And I'll tell you that the moment like you look a demon in the eye, you're like, oh, it's all real.
Right.
Oh my gosh, it's all real.
Right.
And that was a mind blower for me.
Yeah.
I would say for me, Finger of God, this movie just kind of opened a door to like, hey, there might be more that you're missing.
Sure.
But then subsequent years and experiences made that personal, right? Instead of just watching someone else's testimony, I had my own stories.
And it's kind of like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, if you don't practice or go there or ask for these things or go looking, they can kind of disappear. Isn't that kind of strange? Yeah. So.
And I could talk about this all day. Honestly, this is a very favorite topic.
Maybe we'll do a podcast.
Maybe we'll do a podcast. But it's probably worth saying, especially because you only get little sound bites here in Tempus Divum. Like, it's worth saying that, and I don't remember if they say this in the movie or not. Signs and wonders are just signs, and they're just wonders. And it would be a mistake. I think it's probably bad practice to get all wrapped up in them as if they validate the faith.
Right.
I like the way that Bill Johnson puts it. He's like, a sign is just that. It points to something else, namely God's goodness, His grace, but it's not the thing itself. Mm-hmm. And so when we...
Well, he says it's pursuing us. Like, God's pursuing us with these things.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, it's not our job to go chasing after it or Him. He's chasing after us, and sometimes you just have to stop and turn around.
Yeah. Real good. So I hope you enjoyed the movie, and I'm sure we'll be talking about supernatural. You'll hear us talk about it all the time. So.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right. Adios.